Okay, so let's start with the one-word description of Amos. Greg, you want to go ahead and start?
Analytical.
Analytical.
Yeah, intellectual.
Intellectual.
Versatile.
Versatile. I love that. So let's go ahead and expand a little bit. When you think of Amos, Greg, what do you think of?
I think of an individual that had a keen and analytical mind to look at the world as a statistical way to break it down for the people to understand. Amos was an individual, and to me, he still is an individual because people still reflect on him a lot. Taking that information, breaking it down so that the person from the barbershop to the beauty shop to wherever shop they are will understand what it meant for them to be involved in their community.
Mm. When you think of him even right now, is there a story that you look back on and in terms of his own legacy?
Well, it's the census. He will always talk about how important the people were in regards to getting out to vote and participate in the process. The stories that I've seen and been with him is when he would go out and bring his granddaughter with him and to be out in the community and just sitting around and talking about what we had as a community and where we need to go. No matter where he was, that person was the most important person to him at that time. And that he embraced individuals and made people feel as though they were very relevant in his life at that time.
Let me ask you about his voice. Not so much how he sounded, but the voice that he had in our community, both in print and in radio. What kind of voice did he have? What sort of impact did he have in the media?
His voice, he's resonating. His voice was very resonating in our community. Everyone would listen to him and repeat what he had said to them, if it was from the radio to print to wherever. And when you think of Amos in general, you think of an individual that was able to cross the lines all over Indianapolis. And it was very impactful, and he was all about social justice. And when I say, from feeding people, from Moselle Sanders, from the Kennedy King Memorial Initiative to the Urban League, the MC and all the events here throughout the city, Amos probably MC'd more events than anyone I've ever seen in my life. And because of his way of engaging and being thought-provoking for individuals as an MC.
Mm. How did he impact your life?
Well, Amos impacted my life in a lot of ways. When I first got involved in public service, Amos was there. I started my career off as a community-based organizer at Christopher House. Amos was there to help me when I came out of college. And he helped me on my first public service campaigns. Helped me with my linguistics and how to talk to people and how to enunciate and things like that. So he reached back. Amos reached back and taught a lot of people. I mean, you think of a 25-year-old and now being in their mid-60s, Amos reached back and said, think about it from this perspective. How do you communicate? And communication is very important. You have to communicate on different levels with individuals. So he taught you how to know your audience. Amos told me one time, when you go and you're going to speak, go there early, understand, talk to people, know who you're talking to. Know your audience so you can relate to the audience so you can engage them. And that's what he was expert at doing that.
When he died, what did our city lose when he passed away?
We lost a monumental voice. We lost an individual who people trusted. You may not always agree with him, and that was on purpose. He would throw something out there for you to say, oh, that's not right. Yeah, but he made you think. And you have people that are now attempting to do that. I'm one of them, okay? But we lost a voice that was very strong, very deliberate, a voice that people trusted, and a voice that people could, there was a lot of connectivity. Mm. He engaged you, he embraced you, and he was very analytical.
And what would you tell a young person who never met or heard or read Amos Brown? What would you tell them about your friend, the person that you've known for so many years?
Well, I would tell them that there's an individual who understood that statistics was important, and your philosophy is important also, but how that related to their lives and their future. That their future was not just a year or 18 months from now, that there was a longitudinal future that you had to look at, and that's what Amos did. He understood what happened in history, but he also penetrated guided individuals to move in a longitudinal way, and that's what young people understand. Young people today they have a short-term memory. They don't. So we got to teach them to understand what's going to happen 3 to 5 years from now, not 12 to 18 months from now.
Eunice, let me turn to you. When you think of Amos Brown, what are the memories that you think of and the man that he was?
Well, the word that I used was intellect. Amos and I were sparring partners, and we would fight a lot over intellectual matters. And I would always be the person Amos would come to for history of Indianapolis, because having that analytical data is fine, but you still need that history and that background in order to make sound decisions. And he was not shy about calling on me to do that. We would also spar about who was a journalist and who wasn't, because Amos came from a marketing and business background, but he enjoyed the journalistic side of the equation, of communicating with people. And so I would give him those journalistic kinds of strategies and qualities, actually. You can't put your opinion in these things, Amos, if you're going to write a straight news story, I used to tell him. So I would call him a talk show host. And he said he's more than a talk show host. He is a voice. I said, what? And that's true. Amos was a voice that was respected. He was small in stature, but big in influence, big in intellect, big in his ability to use data, hard information on which to base his opinions. So, but they were opinions, I would always tell you. They're not, these are your opinions that you've come up with. You need to leave your opinions out of it if you're going to be a journalist.
So you say you spent a lot of time sparring together. So how would you characterize your relationship?
Oh, we had a great relationship. Amos came in 1975, I believe, into the city. And in 1976, I began to be a reporter at the Indianapolis Star. Prior to that time, I was at the Recorder newspaper. So when he came into town, he did visit at the Recorder. That's how I met Amos. He came to the Recorder and met us, and we visited and so forth. And from then on, we had a relationship. We formed an organization for black journalists at that time. There were only a handful in the city at that time. And he became one of those members, one of those early founding members. I was the chair president of the organization when he came in. And so he would give me advice on which way it should go and what we should be advocating for. And Amos was always big on advocating for what was then called affirmative action in these newsrooms, because you did not see that presence. I think Barbara Boyd was on and a few others, but very few other African Americans were on television or in newsrooms, period. So we worked together quite a bit to advocate for diversifying these newsrooms, and we would talk about best strategies. So we would spar about some of these best practices. He tended to take a more conservative approach from me. I wanted to have picket signs, and it's like, no, you don't do it like that. You do it like this, So we would talk all the time about what should be done here in this city on a number of fronts, not just in journalism, in politics, and in labor, and you name it. So we had a great relationship.
In terms of when you think of him and you think of some of the relationship that you had over the course of his life, is there a story that you can think of where I really enjoyed this time? Or maybe on the flip side, maybe one of the biggest topics that you ended up sparring about. Maybe you could share a story or two.
Well, Amos was often the voice of the Moselle Sanders feeding ministry, the Thanksgiving dinner. And at that time, I think the preachers were coming after me at the Indianapolis Recorder. because they did not want a particular columnist in the paper. And Moselle Sanders was one of these ministers who did not want that columnist in the paper. I don't know if you remember this, but from the front pew was the column, and they wanted that out of the paper. Well, I would say to the preachers, you know, you can write a column, but I'm not going to take this one out because you don't want those opinions expressed. And Amos, he came to me, he said, you know, maybe you should do that. You know, maybe you should, you know, take her out. No, I'm not taking her out. So we went back and forth over this. So this group of ministers were going to boycott the recorder. And so Amos and I got together, we talked about that, and pretty much my attitude was let him. And his attitude was don't let him. So I would tease him about folding to the preachers, you know. And so he would always deny that he was folding to the preachers, that, he thought that was the right thing to do.
Sure.
And so I didn't take the columnists out, however. And we got through that issue relatively unscathed. But he was a person who I could go to bounce ideas off of. And he was always there. I had his number, he had mine. Mm-hmm. And so, we talked quite a bit down through the years. It was just such a loss to see him gone.
Yeah, you think about the important voices that our city has had in how many years that he was here. You said he arrived in 1975. What did our city lose when Amos passed away?
Well, we lost a huge influencer, and I think that's the word that is used today for people who can change and mold opinions. We've lost a huge influencer. And he did not have anything personal to gain, and that's key too, as an influencer. It can't be about you, it has to be about the community. And that's what I think Amos was about. It was about the community. He did not gain anything personal. He didn't make more money, he didn't get new clothes or a new car. It was about the community, so that's what we lost. And I'm not saying that the people who are out there as influencers now are necessarily making personal gain. However, it was clear that he was not, by the shoes he would wear sometimes. No,
yes, yes.
Is there a whole story about shoes?
No.
Okay. No. So if there
he was just very simple, man.
Yeah,
he simple man.
Yeah, he was.
Man.
Yeah, that's what I loved about him,
Right.
because he wasn't flash and all that.
So what would be the one issue that you thought, boy, Amos stands for this above everything else? What was that number one issue for him?
Again, I think it would be affirmative action. It would be allowing at the African American community to have a voice and a place in this city in many realms, be it politics, be it voting, be it housing, be it jobs. Mm-hmm. So that to me, that was where he was. Fairness. In life.
Yeah.
That would be where I think he stood.
Thank you for sharing those stories. So Russ, tell me your relationship with Amos. Take us back to when you first met him.
Well, I'll go back in talking about my dear friend Amos Brown. I got to WTLC in 1977, so about a year and a half after he got there, and we were both there until 1994, and the friendship developed during that time period. It was pretty neat. We had somewhat similar collegiate backgrounds. He was at Northwestern and I was at Notre Dame, both studying broadcasting, but so we understood each other. Some of the things that he did early on that are kind of forgotten now, that he instituted the Morning with the Mayor program, 1 full hour on WTLC once a month, and it started with Mayor Hudnut and it continued with just about all of the subsequent mayors while he was alive. It was amazing. Yeah. And they pulled no punches. This was not opportunities for service. This was, if you got a problem about something, you call, and Bill Hudnut would get the information. If he didn't have an answer, he had one of his administrative people there that took down all the information, and on the next show he would report back on what had happened. The show was groundbreaking because that typically did not happen. Fast forward to 1980. It's time for the census. And in 1970, one of the things that was known about the census, there was a huge undercount in the black community. Mm-hmm. And that meant a lot of things, not the least of which was dollars that could come from the federal government. So Amos came up with a campaign to basically reach out to everybody possible to make sure, here's the importance of being counted in the census. So we were talking about, personalities in radio and television. You're talking sports figures. You're talking religious people. You're talking entertainers, not just locally, but national ones as well. All recorded all these announcements, and we all chipped in and did our part too. And literally, we ran something every hour for a year. And when the '80 census data was released, Indianapolis had one of the lowest undercounts in the black community of any place in the country. And the station won a big award for it, but more importantly was the results, and that was amazing. And you looked at Amos, and this was his baby. 1990 census rolled around. They came to Amos and said, "Can you help us roll this out on a national basis?" Which he did. So those are the kind of things that were pretty amazing that were there in the early years that we worked together. Well, actually, even the later years, there were always things like that. He was a research expert. I was the sales manager and national sales manager for WTLC, and part of what we needed to do was to convince more advertisers the value of the black dollar. Amos came up with research that was amazing. He also knew how to use the Arbitron data to our advantage, and boy, it was something that I took with me everywhere else I went in my career after that. Learned how to use it properly, and use it to make money for the radio station, which we absolutely did. So it was just a special situation there, that here was a guy that I think he knew more about some of that research than some of the people that were at Nielsen and Arbitron, which I thought was pretty amazing. So when I looked at those kind of things, and I looked at those friendships that he had, and I was just pleased to be one of them. But I always looked at having the fun times with Amos too. So I can recount one great story. First couple years I'm at the station, I founded a radio station softball team. We weren't very good. That's putting it mildly. But Amos came out and played, and some of the other staff people, and eventually we got ringers and we got really good. But Amos was out there, and Amos didn't have a lot of athletic ability. That's putting it mildly. But back in that day, one of the best shows on TV was WKRP in Cincinnati. And it was an episode where the WKRP softball team was playing their arch rival, who were the City League champions for media, whatever it was. And I'm watching this, and my wife's watching it with me, and I see Les Nessman out there, who had no athletic ability. If you know the show, you know that would be accurate for Les. And my wife says to me, "That's Amos Brown out there." And then the phone rings. It's our general manager, Al Hobbs, who hardly ever called me at home. He said, "Are you watching WKRP? That's Amos out there." So it was all over the air the next day about, you got to come to our softball games and see Amos in action. And it was a lot of fun. For a media softball team, we got a lot of people come out and followed us.
That's great.
And I give credit Amos for some of it.
I know a lot of our viewers would listen to Afternoons with Amos. Tell us a little bit about that legacy part of his life.
Well, what ended up happening there was that Morning with the Mayor kind of evolved into the noon show with Amos, and he started interviewing community figures, entertainers, and taking on issues across the board. And he did that for a while until he left WTLC in 1994. So he was over at WHHH, where they put a camera in front of him. So now he had the Evening with Amos program that did the same thing, but he was doing it for a TV camera. So as time went on and the stations got sold, he was back to being on TLC again. So the program resurrected on 1310, and he had everybody you could imagine in there. It was a who's who. And it cut across political boundaries too, which my favorite story was when Mike Pence, who's about as conservative as they get, was going to run for governor. It was one of those things that I had worked with both men, and I'm the only person in the city that could probably make that claim. And I just knew that these guys need to get together some way, shape, or form. And Amos said to me, he said, "Well, need to have like a private lunch with him. So I never heard anything more about it until I found out that, well, they did that. And really the point Amos got across was, I just want to be included. You know, when you're doing what you're doing, I want to know about it. I want to be able to report on it and tell people about it. So Mike didn't miss a beat. And this is his broadcast background that was really, really good. When he announced his campaign platform, he did a news conference. And the first interview he did that afternoon was on Afternoons with Amos. So guys like Jim Shella and some of the other reporters said, eat your heart out, guys. Amos got the first story. And everybody understood what was going on, which was really good. And when Mike was elected governor, he would come on Amos's program fairly regularly. Now, the listeners weren't necessarily very pro Mike Pence, but Amos was quick to defend the positive things that Mike did in the community, and also picked on him if there was something that needed to be brought to the forefront. But I always liked seeing what happened there. It's a good example of the type of crossing the party lines and the boundaries to just be inclusionary. So when I look at another word that I like to describe Amos, I say, you know, he really pushed for inclusion. You know, it is something that he was good at all the way up to the day he died.
I want to ask one last question, then I'll let each of you have a final comment. But in terms of what kind of legacy he left here in the city of Indianapolis during his many years that he spent in our city, what would you say, how has our city changed because of the work and the voice and the commitment that Amos Brown had to our city?
With Amos, the legacy from my window of knowing him for a long time was being inclusive. He took parts of our city and what occurred in that, if it's from the Urban League, the Kennedy King Memorial Initiative, the Moselle Sanders, all the byproducts of the city, he blended them all together so that people would understand what those programs and projects meant to the city. And he brought those individuals from all different walks of life. He was a voice for the voiceless. And people who felt like they had nothing to contribute, Amos gave them the will to communicate through him, whoever, to make things better for our community. That's what he did. He encouraged people. He was really a change agent.
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. Eunice, what about you? What do you think?
Well, much like what Greg was saying, I called him the mouthpiece. And so we had that kind of relationship, and that he was, and that meant that he was a voice for the voiceless. You know, he left a legacy that is, there are efforts now to replicate that. And I just don't think they're quite hitting the same mark. But he did set an example that we should continue to follow today, because it was an effective way of conveying information to our community across many sectors of the community. His show was not listened to by only the Black community, it was listened to by the community, and particularly the powers in the community listened to him. I don't know that we have that anymore. So that is a legacy that he left, and we need it again.
Thank you for sharing that, Eunice. That's really sweet. Russ,
Well,
what's
as
your
the
thought?
broadcaster, Eunice, you hit it right on the head when you talked about people from all walks paid attention to the Amos Brown show. And as one who paid attention to what the ratings were, I could get my hands on that, and I would look 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., a little spike in the ratings on the radio station there because of what it was he did. And if he showed up on somebody else's program or something, people were tuning in to see what was going on. And he was also very, very good in lending his hand to other fundraising events besides Moselle Sanders. There were telethons going on, Jerry Lewis it was one that comes to mind, and other ones that were done in the community here by TV stations such as Channel 13. And they would ask Amos to come in because Amos knew how to make the phones ring.
Yeah.
People would call in and contribute their money and help the cause, and he could passionately tell the story of what that organization was about. And there weren't a whole lot of organizations that were doing good in the community that didn't have an outreach to Amos Brown, because he knew that he could get the story across that would be something that would resonate with the people that needed to be reached at that point in time.
Any other thoughts? Anybody have a closing thought that maybe something that you wanted to say about Amos that I didn't give you a chance to say in any of my questions? Anybody have something they'd like to add about him?
He is missed. Amos is missed. We have lost a tremendous voice in this community, and you know, he'll live on in my heart forever.
I think of the ones that have gone on, and think about Amos, and sometimes I say, okay, how will he approach this? And as I think about my other mentors, because he's a mentor with Sam Jones and Bill Crawford and Julia Carson, people like that. Okay, so how would they react during these times? Even though they were, you know, a long time, but that's what he meant to me. He said, how will he articulate this? How will he attack this situation or address it and for a better outcome?
Got it. Final thought
When I
about it?
look at what Amos accomplished there, one of the things I think of a lot that we didn't go into great detail on here was the political side of Amos, and he knew it backwards and forwards. He knew every candidate, and he would get all those candidates on his show. You know, even the ones that were like the third or fourth party candidates, they were welcome on there, and he would interview them and pull no punches, asking what needed to be asked and put it out in a way that you wouldn't necessarily catch on a soundbite on TV or an article in the Indianapolis Star. He did it, and I always reached out to him just because I wanted to know what the heck was going on. And once in a while, I was able to give him a little bit of friendly advice too, which he greatly took. There was one time when President Obama was running for president here, and he lost the primary in Indiana to Hillary Clinton. And I was the general manager of the Hispanic radio stations there, and Hillary Clinton came in and spent all kinds of money to reach the Hispanic population across the state. For whatever reason, Obama didn't think that that was necessary. Hillary won by 14,000 votes. Had Obama, you know, done something in the Hispanic community, they would have probably split that vote, and he would have won. Needless to say, when the general election rolled around, I think there was this wheelbarrow that showed up at all the Hispanic stations around the state with lots and lots of money, and as you know, he went on to win the state of Indiana, which was a rarity for a Democrat to do. And I can credit Amos for helping push that cause across. I do remember calling him on election night, and he was almost in tears. And I said, Amos, did you ever think this was going to happen? And he just kind of, no, but I'm sure glad it did.
Yes. Wow. Did you want to say
Amos,
something, Greg?
he had the pulse of the community. He had the pulse of our community. And when you have the pulse and you understand what's out there and what people are feeling, you can lead. And that's what that's what helped him be a good leader, because he understood what was going on.
Greg, Eunice, Russ, thank you so much for spending time talking about Amos Brown and his legacy, and look forward to chatting with you guys in the future about some other topics. So thanks so much.
Appreciate you. Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks,
Scott,
Scott.
wonderful.